I'm going to do my honorees, and then I'll pass it over to you. Yeah, they're going to bring it all over to you. My tech team, we don't have any mics for our panelists. Are you going to get mics for these guys? Okay. We still have seats that are open. If you guys, if anyone wants to come up, we still have open seats. Charlene, can you find out, ask them how close we are to, because it's 4. We're ready. Hey, listen, Charlene, come here. There's still a lot of people in the bar line. Do we need to add more chairs, or are you going to just stay back here? The attendees, if you have spare chairs, if you could like kind of scoot over, so the people that are in the bar line can, when they get over here, they can take one of the seats that are on the end. We're all going to get really cozy here. And then Charlene will be in the back, and she'll help you all find a seat once you get through the bar line. But we're going to go ahead and do, we're going to honor a group of people that were nominated by their peers for going above and beyond the extra call of duty. We know that everybody here works very hard in their profession, and we wish everyone could be an honoree. But we do have a group that we're going to award right now. But before give our sponsors a round of applause. Okay, well, I'm going to start with John Chen. He's the director of IT for the Archer School for Girls. John Chen, are you here? John Chen, I just saw him a little while ago. Angelina Korska is the CIO at Steinberg Diagnostic Medical Imaging Center. Angeline, are you here? These people have checked in, so I do believe they're here somewhere. Jaro, and I apologize for messing up your last name. Is it N? Morado is the IT director at the Los Angeles Dream Center. Is that you? Come on up. Here, Charlene, you want to just... Frank Hahn is the SVP ISO at PCB Bank. Frank Hahn, come on up. Congratulations, Frank. Sam Kim is the Director of Information Security at the agency. Sam, are you here? Sam Kim, come on up. Charlene, you want to hand these? Derek Landis is the Senior Cybersecurity Controls Testing Analyst at BMO. Derek Landis, come on up. Congratulations. Irving Lope is the Manager of Information Security Audit at First Citizens Bank. Irving, are you here? No, I called her. No, I don't think I called. Yeah, I'm sorry, Derek. I don't think I called your name. Yeah. Dan Merriman, IT Director at Dante Valve. Dan Merriman. Stephen Roberts is the CISO at America Honda Motors. Stephen Roberts, are you still here? Jonathan Tang is cyber engineer at Northrop Grumman Corporation. All right, we're moving on to our panelists today. I have Gary Gooden, who is the Deputy Chief Information Officer of the County of Ventura, who is sitting on our panel. Thank you, Gary, and congratulations. I have Dhruv, am I saying that right? I know. Pandya is the Director of Information Security at Wistia. Congratulations. I have Marvin Cruz, who is going to moderate our panel today, who is the CISO at CGI. And then I have Annie Flippo, who is the Chief Data Officer at Urgently, who is sitting on the panel today as well. So Marvin, do you want to come up here? Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Marvin. So everyone, let's welcome our panelists today. I do feel like the sound needs to be louder, and if I could ask everyone on the other side of the room to please take your conversations. No one can hear me. So all the people on the other side of the room, can you all hear me? We are streaming to about 200 people, and I will walk over and quiet everyone down. But everyone, let's welcome our panelists. All right, that was...
Thank you, Kim. Okay, thank you, everyone. And before we start, one thing that I wanted to, or we all agreed to, is that rather than just going through a bunch of questions and answers, we want to make it interactive. So at any time, if you have any questions, if you want to jump in or say anything, comments, or ask them anything, please feel free to do so. Okay. So with that said, I'm actually really excited with the panel because normally we have a panel of CISOs. This time we have Deputy CIO, we have a CISO, and then we have also a CDO, data officer. So you'll get to hear perspectives from all three of them in their respective areas of expertise. With that, what I'll do first, I know Kim did very light introductions, but if you want to do other introductions, feel free to.
Good afternoon, folks. I feel very honored to be here, to be talking to really smart people. There's probably very little that I'm going to say that will give you an aha moment. So I'm actually interested to hear comments from you. But anyway, hopefully it'll be of value. My name is Gary Gooden, as you know. I'm the Deputy CIO for the County of Ventura for what is called Network Services. So I'm responsible for data networks, voice telephony infrastructure, field services. Those are the guys that go on cable buildings through the county for hospitals as well. Emergency radio systems for county sheriff, county fire, and the various police departments within the County of Ventura. I'm also responsible for cybersecurity. I'm not the CISO, but I run all the security teams. I was a CISO for 10 years. And I'm also involved in the DR planning process and implementation for the County of Ventura. So that's me. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dhruv Pandya, Director of Information Security at a company called Wistia. My main role involves the GRC and the product security as both, and I'm recently delving into more privacy-based issues as well after the advent of AI. Honored to be here, as Gary mentioned. Love to hear more from you, have more questions from you, so looking forward to this panel. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Annie Flippo. I am the Chief Data Officer for Urgently. And for those who don't know what that is, we are a roadside assistance software and services company. But we're not direct to consumer. You're probably familiar with AAA. You have a problem, you call them. You probably have a subscription. We are B2B to C. So we are the people behind auto manufacturers, fleet and rental cars, so on. So if you rented a Hertz, that type of thing, at the back of your rental lease agreement, if you break down, call this number, that's us. So I came from software engineering, did a lot of product management in data, 15 years in data science, kind of just moved around as I did interesting work, and then I landed as a CDO. Now working to manage 3 teams, BI, data engineering, data science. My perspective is all about data, and all C-level people have to think about security, not just CISO, not just CTO, CIO, everyone. So happy to share my views and have great conversations.
Thank you. And Marvin Cruz, CTO, LA CTO for CGI, an IT consulting company. So why don't we start with some AI questions? We'll start with you, Gary. From the lens of Deputy CIO, what would you recommend organizations think through and do as they start planning for rolling out AI implementations or policies in AI? What would you recommend them?
That's a huge question.
Yeah, very broad.
That's a word. So let me answer the question in kind of a roundabout way, if that's okay. It really depends on the organization, depends on organizational culture. It depends on whether or not your senior technology executives have a voice in the C-suite. It also depends on whether or not you're aligned with the strategic business imperatives of the organization in question. So let's assume, for example, that you have all of that in place, right? You have the ear of the C-suite. If you have a board of directors, you have the ear of the board. You're aligned with the strategic direction of the organization, and you have a technology strategic roadmap that everybody has bought off on, inclusive of the board of directors. Let's assume all of that. My first question would be, 1, do you have a data governance framework in place? Do you have a data classification model in place? Do you have the wherewithal to do labeling of data? And I'm not talking about manual labeling. So let's take my case, for instance, where you have years and years of non-structured data all over the place. And you have cloud-hosted data seats, as it were. So data is all over the place. And then on top of that, if you don't have sensitivity labeling in place, that's something to consider. So let's assume that you have none of that, and at the same time, you don't have an identity access management program. So you don't have entitlements, you don't have RBAC in place to handle onboarding, offboarding, add moves and changes, and you don't have elevated credentialing processes in place. Years ago, we used to talk about, at conferences, the big thing was, what's your cloud strategy? What's your cloud strategy? And I would always kind of snicker because from my perspective, that, in my mind, it was a bit of a misnomer. It really wasn't so much a cloud strategy, but it really was, within many companies, was their line of business execs were striking deals with third parties about hosting or doing things for them. and they weren't aligned with the IT organization, so you have stealth IT all over the place. And what happened is that people then started to react to that to say, oh, we need to understand where data is so we can protect ourselves. So we talk about digital transformation, we talk about having a cloud strategy, and then every cloud service vendor jumped on that bandwagon and truly turned this into a massive revenue stream. Now we have a situation with artificial intelligence just starting out on its curve, as it were, going up. So what we now are faced with is what I call hyper accelerated stealth IT. And so I think of AI challenges, I think of water. You really can't stop it, you have to find a way to coexist with it. So my first suggestion would be to have, at the very least, a data governance process. Make sure that you don't have your senior technology executives overselling the promise of what some of these productivity deals in particular can give you. Like, say, for example, not picking on any one company, but like a co-pilot. And if you have dev pipelines, whether it's CI/CD pipelines or not, and if you're in a dev shop, then you have to understand that folks are out there trying to develop and push out their own code bases without going through the quote-unquote traditional IT models. So it's becoming almost a distributed framework within the organization. So at the end of the day, I'm talking about doing basic hygiene things: data governance, data classification, auto-labeling, if you can do it, work on building sensitivity labels, working with your legal teams. And then once you have those frameworks in place, really focus on having an identity program. Those things take a long time, and AI isn't going to wait on you. So you have to find a way to accelerate all of this work while trying to ensure that people understand that what they're really doing is potentially upscaling inside a threat. So it's a bit of a mouthful. I hope I tried to answer the question.
No, that was great. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Dhruv, from the lens of a CISO, what would you add to the items that Gary went through?
I think in the keynote today, we had a great statement, right? The story of AI and its uses is being written. Like, we are still in that phase where rules are coming up, right? There's a lot that has to be done on our side. See, cybersecurity has a lot of worries in terms of different controls that we establish from a compliance perspective at our companies as well. So AI definitely throws a wrench, but it all depends on what your business case is, what your business is going for, right? If it propels your business, then absolutely the security person's job comes back to keeping the risk at a residual level and just helping the business. I agree with Gary on the controls, right? Like for data governance and stuff as well. One of the reality is we have to expect more and ask more of the AI vendors in the market. So from a compliance and security perspective and more assurance perspective, like they don't do a great job at this point. One of the things I realized when we started working with OpenAI, there's no document negotiation to work with. There are rules and you accept it, but when they offer compliance, it's mostly SOC 2. For a company like OpenAI, you can do better. You can lead the market with the more compliance related certifications, and even now AI related assurance certifications, right? And then you soon realize that if you're using OpenAI, they don't give you more filters and prompts when entering data. So if somebody is supposed to enter an SSN, OpenAI doesn't have an issue. It will take it. It won't respond it. So for a security person, that becomes a nightmare. And now you take that load and go to your application developers and say, can you work something, a regular expression maybe? Because we don't want this to go to OpenAI, right? So it's a huge lift on your company side. And if your business is aware of those circumstances, I think it's easy for you to implement and bring AI and support the productivity and keep it up, right? But there are also some of the smaller vendors who have great LLMs, and they provide out-of-the-box security support for you. I would mention DeepGram is one of the products that we've used in the past, and they provide protection and regular expressions and identifications for PCI-related data, HIPAA-related data, which is so amazing because then as a security person, you don't have to worry much about your data being leaked, or at that point, it's blocked at the entry level versus worrying everything else. And then, yes, I always go back to like the legal assurances. Companies have to do better for legal assurances as well. So as I said, the keynote speaker was apt on saying the rules are being written. So it's not one size fits all. It's based on your business strategy and how aggressive you want to be in the market. But then the CISOs have to just make sure the risks are at residual level.
Thank you. And Ani, so Gary touched on data and data governance, but from your role as a chief data officer, anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about AI, AI is a subset of data science. We've been doing data science for about, I don't know, 15 years actively, but really like since the 60s. Back when it started, it wasn't really a problem because everybody built their own model in-house. You use your own data, you use your own programmers, you create your models, you make predictions on your products, whatever, what have you. Now, when we talk about AI, it's LLM, it's large language models, right? It's chatbot capabilities. So the first to market is all the vendors, right? The OpenAI, the Anthropics, and all that. And in order to use that quickly, you use an API. Now, you don't really have to use an API. You can actually get the model, which is just a gigantic matrix of embeddings down to your own company's cloud, and create your own model, and you can feed it whatever you want. So if you're worried about leaking, let's say, we work in roadside assistance. I have to use PII. I know people's name, phone number, VIN number. I know their home address because I have to go there and pick them up. That is our business. So using a vendor is probably not in our future. So for what we're going to do is we're going to download things from Olama, download it from Hugging Face, wherever, and then have a data science team directly build specifically tailored stuff to our needs, so we don't have to hit an endpoint and then share data out in the world, which, terms of service, I don't know how many emails did you get just this week, the change of terms of service from Facebook and from all these other places. I don't even have time to read the changes terms of service. So in order to control all the data coming in and out, my preference as a CDO is take a little longer to build your own, but you have full control of all the data and the model that comes out of. And you can actually explain it and not like, oh, OpenAI is now 4.0 or 4.1. Like, I don't know what it is, but I know what I downloaded, right? I know that I download Olama 3.3, for example, and this is the set level that we're using, building from dev, QA, prod, right? So from that perspective, I think we have some mitigation steps that we could control our use of data.
Thank you, Annie. Let me slightly switch into cybersecurity, and maybe I'll start with you, Dhruv, as the CISO from the panel. What would you recommend, or what would you tell organizations that they need to do in order to prepare for cyber threats arising from the growth of AI?
Thank you. That's a broad question. And the reason for that is cyber threats using AI can be anything from having a phishing strategy drafted by an AI, from using bots to attack a company, or internal threats where we have AI-generated code. There's a lot that can happen. Right now, the strategy mostly has been deploying right countermeasures and having a little bit more manual oversight on the controls as well, trying to identify different behaviors. I always believe that if an organization can use a SIEM solution to the best of its capacity, there's a lot that can be uncovered before something happens. So that is also a good way to look at it. We try to make sure that the code is also reviewed. Having the static scanner, dynamic scanners, having bug bounty programs do help too, because ultimately those are your controls that can uncover a lot of issues that has been bypassed or missed. So those are few of the strategies which can be deployed. And again, as I said, right, it depends on how your business model is. Like the business model or the defense strategies for a company like Cisco might differ from a company like Wistia. So it all depends upon how much you want to invest and how much you want to go aggressive in terms of protecting yourself from an emerging threat market.
Thank you. Now, from the CDO perspective, how would you answer that question? Similarly, and yeah, no, this is yeah. What would you advise organizations to protect themselves against cyber threats that are originating from AI?
So there's, I don't know if you guys watch a lot of the AI news. A chatbot was talking to another chatbot to make a hair appointment or something. And then they're like, oh, I noticed are you a chatbot? He goes, yeah, I am. You're a chatbot? Yes, I am. And they start going off in their own special machine language sound instead of talking in English, right? So, you know, how do you spot deep fake? It's very hard for us humans. Maybe another bot can figure it out. So whatever their advancements in threats, there will be advancement in detection using AI. I guarantee there are lots of vendors here. They're probably working on it right now. So whatever capabilities that the bad guys are doing, we're not far behind. And whoever gets there first, well, gets the contract. Hello. Are they? Okay, they're not listening to us. But I think, yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. That's just an arms race, right?
Yeah, thank you. And Gary, your thoughts on it? Again, this is with securing, from AI
so
threats.
I think it's a really, really difficult question, only because it depends. It depends on the company. It depends on the size of the company. It depends on the longevity of the company. It depends on the culture of the company. And it depends on how much budget you have. Stuff costs money, and good, bad, or indifferent, companies are selling products. So the biggest thing that you can do is have a story to tell. If you can sell your story to the folks who can release your purse strings, and if you have a plan that makes sense, you'll be okay. If you put into place basic cyber hygiene practices, you will also have a lower likelihood of having a problem. You can invest in as much tech as you want, and I've seen this over the years. Shelfware. We all know about shelfware, but if you don't have a program, a cyber program that's based on a framework, pick any framework and tie yourself to that framework, build your controls around that framework. I don't care if it's AI, I don't care if it's quantum coming, it really doesn't matter. Humans haven't evolved that fast. You will probably be in a better position. It is an extraordinarily difficult thing, and every single time I listen to webinars and sit in panels or just listen, I hear a common theme. It's, I need to cut my budget. The company's under pressure. We're worried about retention. I'm not sure if I can get the resources I need. I'm trying to talk to several vendors about hosted services. The issues are constant.
Never ending.
It's never ending. So I think if you try to apply basic cyber hygiene practices, if you have a cogent story to tell your C-suite or your board of directors, I guarantee you're going to be in a better position. And then we can talk about technology all day, but those things to me, the human element, having those processes and procedures in place, I think are going to become your table stakes. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Gary.
I really need to ask the room to please be quiet. We are streaming to 200 people, and we're getting tons of feedback from our virtual audience that they cannot hear. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if you have conversations, can you please take them out to the hallway so our virtual audience can hear? Thank you so much. We appreciate you cooperating with us. Now back to the panel.
Okay. I thought you were joining the panel. No. Okay, well, before I go on to any more questions, let me see if the audience has any questions or any areas that they would like to go into at all. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on using like red teaming to explain that story to the purse string holders?
CFO.
Any assets that you can bring to bear to tell the story are assets that you should have. If you don't have internal red teams, then you obviously need to have a third party to do it for you. But just taking a step back, if you read the books, they'll say, oh, the first thing you have to do is understand what your risks are. You have to understand where your data is. You have to understand what the business has to lose, okay? And you have to understand where the business wants to go. And then they'll say, oh, you need to do a business impact analysis to determine risk. And those are foundational things that you have to do, but unfortunately, from my perspective, and especially given where we are today with what I consider to be the tip of the start of a whole amazing industry called AI and and the promise of what it's going to bring, we don't have time to go through these formalized steps. So you need to bring to bear, in my mind, all of the history, all of your experience, and if you have a trusted third-party partner to do exactly what you're asking for, then I think you'll be in a better position. But somebody asked me years ago, what's the number one skill set of a CISO? And I said, being a good storyteller. That's it. Mm-hmm. I've seen so many CISOs who can't tell a story. They technically know exactly what they need to do, but nobody's listening. And if you're the kind of person who they don't want to listen to, you're already done before you started. So storytelling, I think, is critical. Having the wherewithal to be able to present the threats, as you asked, in a manner in which it's digestible by people who don't do this for their daily work. And hopefully that made sense. Yeah.
That's a great point. Anything to add before we go to the next question?
Yeah, I used to be database administrator long time ago. And so I worked at a business that was a real-time business, so real-time e-commerce. And I was tasked to make sure the database is recoverable if we ever failed. And I said, I need downtime to test this. They're like, you don't get downtime. I said, okay, this is the risk. And I learned this, I had a really great mentor, manager who helped me explain in a kind of like, to a fifth grader would understand. I said, if we don't do this, our loss is $2,000 of revenue per minute. And then the VP says, well, what do you need? I said, I need to buy this product, that I need 2 hours of downtime. I know that during that 2 hours we won't get our revenue, but it's better than the alternative, which we will be down for 3 days. He goes, okay, I need a plan. Tell me what your plan is. What is the backup plan? What is the recovery plan? So I did all that, and then I was able to get my plan through, because if they're gonna, if my head is on the chopping block, I want to make sure you understand what's at stake. So I think quantifying the actual, not just downtime, that's very kind of nebulous. Like, what does downtime mean for your business, right? And so this, typically you would kind of give him, it costs $100,000. Well, that's a lot of money. But you're going to lose $2,000 revenue per minute downtime. Well, how many minutes are we going to, So I think that kind of helped me understand what the stakeholders are looking at.
That's a great point, quantifying. Dhruv?
I'll say almost the same thing, but in a very different language. Because when I started my career in cybersecurity, I felt for the first year or two that I was selling insurance. And soon I realized that doesn't work. Executives get jaded because every time you're going to go and say, we have a risk. We have a risk that is X criticality, right? We would go in and say, this is the industry best practice. They don't understand that. And even if they do, the biggest aspect that missed out was the personalization of the conversation. And when I say personalization, I don't want you to know where he goes for golfing, but how it relates to the company. Why should he spend money, right? If I was in the same seat, I would ask that same question. And I do ask that question at a different table. but explaining how the return of investment reflects, just because it's a risk, doesn't mean I have to solve it, right? I have to understand the risk tolerance. I have to understand the risk appetite. And once I have that clear, any conversation that you make is on the same level of the executive that you're going to have. And you are no longer selling insurance, right? And that's the best part about it. Of course, I've tried to evolve and go away from selling insurance, but at some point I do default to my cybersecurity background and say, it's a risk. This is the industry best practice, we got to do it. But yeah, just to add.
Thank you. And I believe we have a question here.
First of all, thank you very much for making this interactive, because it makes the discussion more interesting. I hear a lot today and recently about using AI to automate the security. The question that I have is basically, first of all, when we talk about AI, we need to be more specific. Are we talking about machine learning? Or, as I suspect, mostly we are talking about generative AI, large language model, as opposed to general AI, which we don't have yet, and we are probably 10, 15, 20 years away. Now, the problem, because if you use it for security, and you're talking about financial institutions or healthcare industry that are subject to very strict regulations, we know that generative AI is basically based on a huge statistical model. There is no intelligence involved. The computer just looks at the data, huge database, and says what's the most likely word that comes after this token and after that one, right? Because of that, even though 80%, 90% of time, let's say most of the time, is correct, we also know it makes huge mistakes and sometimes fabricate things, and that's what they call it, hallucination. So what happens in the case of that when you're using it in the context of security or healthcare providers, that if you make a mistake, that could be fatal in terms of compromising the industry and violating all the regulations. So totally relying on that at this state of the art and practice seems to me unrealistic and impractical. So we need to be realistic. We need to have the human intelligence involved working with AI to make it more productive and make it more efficient and effective and be realistic. What do you think? Do you think it's possible to totally automate it and rely on AI to do it as claims are being made?
So I like the way you posited your opinion. I agree. Earlier in the discussion, we talked about cloud strategies and that thing. We talked about stealth IT, and my point was that we're now in a hyper cycle of stealth IT. But I think of people and problems in the way in which you think about water. Water will find a way, okay? That's why I said earlier, if you focus on basic cyber hygiene practices, if you can tell a cogent story to the people who want to do certain things, because they're running a business, or it might be a for-profit business, a non-profit, a government, you have to understand where they're going. If they understand, not just from an empirical perspective, so you're not selling insurance, but from a human perspective, and I can say, for example, like say in the context of say a county, every single dollar that we spend is taxpayer dollars, for the most part, right? So we think about in terms of constituents, what's the net result to the constituent? When I was in healthcare for many years, and you would have these silos of IT folks, and then you have silos within different businesses trying to do their own thing. Massive research entities who are doing bleeding edge technology, and they don't care about certain things that I might care about on a clinical side, because they mightn't think of PHI as PHI, because to them it's consented data as opposed to non-consent data. you have to be able to tell a story. You have to be able to explain to them in rational terms that doesn't disrespect what you're trying to do. And if you form tight partnerships with some of these folks, you're probably going to end up going in the same direction anyway. And again, I think we're just at the tip of the spear. We're at the beginning of this journey. And I don't think that we're going to evolve at the pace at which the technology is going to evolve. From a controls perspective, from a protection perspective, it is next to impossible. Just think about it. Many years ago, board of directors didn't have finance people sitting on boards, right? It was literally a congressional mandate that forced them to have finance people on the boards. 2 years ago, there was the FCC mandate to have cybersecurity practitioners as sitting board members. Well, that went the way of the dinosaur. So you still don't have a situation where the folks who are responsible for the governance of the organization are aligned completely with the folks who are operationally running the business, the CEOs, for example, and how that relates to the folks who are trying to protect the business from themselves. And I tend to think about cybersecurity in the same way you'd think about, it's a horrible analogy, but mental health. If I break my arm and I go into urgent care, you see my arm's broken, you're going to fix it. But for you to sit and look at somebody and say, oh yeah, I know that person's having a mental health crisis without them seeing it, is next to impossible unless they're physically manifesting certain conditions. So think about cybersecurity now. You're asking people to invest in technology at a potential huge expense for something that has yet to occur, that might never occur, that they can't see, feel, or touch. And then on top of that, you have tech companies who understand the business premise and the city promise of AI, and they're trying to accelerate AI development within their tool sets to help you. So it's a revenue feeding stream. At the end of the day, you have to think about what the business wants to do and work with them. And to the point that was made earlier, if they understand and they can express their risk appetite, okay, so be it. So it's kind of a roundabout answer, but I hope you see where I was going with the answer or the point of view.
It's a great question. So I'm more on the optimistic side of AI. And the no, sure. But yeah, I think I was just referring to you, right? Like I think AI will have bias right now. I understand. LLMs are now commercialized. They were very the use of LLMs have been there for a while. It's not the newest thing in the market, right? But like Carbon Black or other security vendors have been talking about their back-end AI for a while now. So I've seen that. It's not new for me. But now we have, as you mentioned, right? It's a democratization of the whole artificial intelligence that we are using it at the scale that we are using. And I feel like one of the things a security person has to constantly think about, I've tried to build a SOC team in multi-region. It's a nightmare, right? Because you have SOC analysts sitting in different country, different time zones, trying to aggregate risk and threats and trying to make sure that timestamps are noted. There's a lot of things that can happen. Where I see AI coming in, and of course we have to mention alert fatigue. Even with the best tools available to us, there is an alert fatigue for cybersecurity professionals that can be an absolute nightmare. Like potential of missing a critical alert is very high at that point. And I think that's where we use AI. Like all of these vendors, right? They have a right use. They figured out the business that can be used in order to help cybersecurity professionals. That's a great thing. And I think if we can do it with a mutual understanding of safety, even if there is an error ratio, we should accept it. Because it's the same example of if Mercedes or Ford wouldn't have fixed the crankshaft, we would still be using that to start the car, right? Rather than touching our Bluetooth phone and saying, start the car. And so we have to aid in the process and say, be willing to accept a little bit of error on the technology's part in order to accelerate that and see it at a beneficial stage in the future. But that's that's what helps making decision. And as I said, right, it should be mutually acceptable rather than just whatever is presented to us, we should accept it. So that's my perspective.
I just have one more thing to add here. So on my data science team and I had a little challenge, and we said, hey, let's try this Copilot thing, this newfangled thing. Maybe I don't need you anymore. Maybe I can just use this thing to create new code. They're like, yo, whoa, let's check it out. So we had a challenge to create a very light, streamlit chat app, just talk about Monopoly rules, the game Monopoly. So somebody used ChatGPT, somebody used DeepSeek, and somebody used Gemini. Everybody, I did it too, and okay, let's see the code, run it. Okay, run your Streamlit app. And we ran it, no, none of the app ran. So I said, well, what error are you getting? Well, some weird error. I'm like, okay, let's Google that, let's see what that is. So what happens is that LLM is trained with data up to a certain point, right? Like maybe a year ago. It takes a long time to train because lots of computing power. They're getting faster. So what happened was that the function that the ChatGPT told us to use is deprecated. In the newer version, it's not that anymore, something else. The ChatGPT didn't know that, right? Because it only knows what it knows. So in terms of like answering back to automation of AI, I don't think 100% automation of cybersecurity using AI is reality right now. It's probably for outlier detection, so like high-level stuff. As one of the vendors' presentation said, somebody found a new vulnerability, and within 20 minutes, somebody was already using it. Somebody was attacking us with it. So, can an AI turn around that quickly and learn something that quickly? In the future, but not now. And I think there'll always be some human around to make sure things go right. I don't think 100% automation is our goal. I think automation, smart automation is our goal.
So
Thank
in other words, automation makes professionals more efficient and effective, but it's not going to replace them. That's at this state of the art. That's what.
Yeah, thank you. We have another question here.
So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge on a very important topic. So my question is, as AI gets integrated with organization systems more and more, and it gets mainstream more and more, there's one more attack surface that is emerging, which is AI itself. So for example, AI depends a lot on the data. What if the data gets corrupted? What if the prompts that we give to AI agents, that gets manipulated? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I can go first. So when DeepSeek came out, I don't know, a few months ago, everybody, oh my God, market crash, and a lot of people did that, not just me. I'm from Hong Kong, so I have a kind of sideway relationship with China. I'm a British citizen at the time, not Chinese citizen. So just to be clear for all those, I was never a Chinese citizen, I was British. And so I asked a lot about Tiananmen Square. I asked a lot about the Cultural Revolution. I asked a lot about that in the DeepSeek web version. And it said, sorry, cannot answer those questions because I am a safe and productive chatbot, and I cannot talk about things that could be harmful. I'm like, why is it harmful to talk about history? So how did the chatbot know how to do that? Well, it has to be trained on data. So if you take away some of the data that it never knew about, it doesn't know about that. So I asked about Gemini. Gemini answered the question. I asked ChatGPT answered the question. But DeepSeek didn't. I actually wrote a quick blog on LinkedIn. So the thing is, garbage in, garbage out. If your data is not good and not complete, well, output is not going to be good or complete. So it depends on your use case. Now, if you're not a history teacher or if you're just sitting in your office trying to figure out bank fraud, maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay that DeepSeek took out all the Chinese history that was questionable because it didn't really affect you. But if you are doing something else, like doing a history paper or, high school kids doing AP class in, world history, whatever, that may be not so good. So I think it depends on your use case. But I would say, my opinion, my suggestion is don't use DeepSeek on the website because whatever you're typing in is going to their servers. If you really want, I would suggest you download the LM Studio, would download to your laptop, then you can choose all the models that you want to use on your laptop. When you go on your plane, you have no Wi-Fi, everything still works because all running locally. And you can try it out.
It's an inherent risk, and it will stay an inherent risk for a while. It's not going to go away, and rightfully, as we have right now a lot of AI companies coming up from different parts of the world, right? And so the data that has been used to train that model certainly influences the responses that the AI gives, right? Your question around can AI be a risk itself, if you allow to write, yes, of course. Like there's a night and day difference between using Grok and OpenAI, right? Right now, X or Twitter is in battle with the government of India for that same reason. Grok doesn't have a filter. There is no community filter, right? And different countries will perceive it at a different way, and they want to localize AI. Like Saudi Arabia is working hard to make sure that they have their own set of LLM companies. Everybody wants AI independence, and the reason for that is you don't want that influence of different data sets, right? And being cognizant of that, and then of course following the basic security practices of checking the box, right? There's a lot of things you can do on your back end in order to make sure that the data doesn't get corrupted. Data integrity is one of the primary pillars of cybersecurity. So if we have to maintain the CIA triad, what are we going to do about it? And what can be done best at this point? Because not everything is in our hand, and the book is still being written. So it is going to be an inherent risk for a while, but that's a acceptance that you take and go with that mindset. So then you can apply right filters on it, but otherwise it's a fair possibility.
I'm trying to stay consistent. Cyber hygiene.
Be positive.
Cyber hygiene, cyber hygiene, cyber hygiene, basic practices, and then layering into your tool sets. You know, you think about, when I think about cyber threats, I think about IEDs. Used to have IEDs, and the IED would blow up a Humvee in Iraq or wherever, and then soldiers were up armoring Humvees themselves. They're putting stuff on the Humvees, and then people said, "Oh, that's stupid," and they built MRAPs. And MRAPs were going through, and the IEDs would blow up, and guys still alive and girls still alive. Then the quote-unquote folks that are fighting against them got smart and said, let's make shape charges. And they made shape charges. It would bore holes through the MRAPs and kill everybody inside. And they said, oh, crap. So my point is that everything is always about up-armoring. Up-armoring is just nascent, and it's natural for the landscape. That's why they call it cyber warfare. That's all. And and you have to, I also think you have to respect your adversaries. You don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you have to respect their technical ability, and you have to try and step in their shoes for a second and understand what they're trying to do, whether it's a single adversary, whether it's an APT, whatever it is, right? Understand why they're doing what they're doing. Are they creating ransomware as a service? What are they doing? What's their driver? The driver is revenue. And they don't necessarily have the inherent bureaucracies that you might have within your company to get stuff done. They're just gonna go, right? So if you see it from that perspective, then you'll know that your salvation is really cyber hygiene practices, telling a cogent story, working with trusted third-party technology companies that are your partners to develop their quote-unquote technology stacks using some of the same tools that bad actors are using to create attack vectors into your organization. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's how I see it, really.
Thank you. Now, here's another question that we have here.
Hello, thank you for the fantastic panel. So I come from a telecom industry, and what we provide is just the pipe, right? So basically, for me, I say security is the end customer's responsibility, and we protect our network by DDoS, getting the services that way, and protect my equipment. Basically, that's what I care for. But to me, it looks like coming from a medium-sized businesses or SMBs, and our CFO would probably pour money if the end customer asks for a secure internet one day, right? So for what should be or what would be the best takeaway for for this kind of companies, or what should be anything more that I can do in order to secure the network?
It's not necessarily a bad scenario when your CFO says that this is justified by a customer request, because he's literally talking about the return of investment at that point. But in order to be a step ahead, there's always an opportunity for the internal stakeholders to do a threat evaluation, business impact analysis, and identify what can happen, and then appropriately assign a risk level to that. Now you have a starting point. That's just the starting, right? And then kind of understand from a different perspective, like how exactly realistic is this particular threat to my company? And then contractual side is a big help. Like if you can have access to at least 10 of your major customers and their security requirements, I wouldn't say I guarantee, but I'll assure you they'll have great security requirements that can be translated in your business slide to talk about, right? And that way, you at least have a strong chance of your CIO or CFO saying, makes sense. And of course, give him an idea on like, we need to do this right now, or we need to do this in the next 6 months, or this is part of this. I've evaluated with different team members, because you're not going to implement a security software by yourself. You're going to need a lot of other stakeholders. So when you have a lot of other stakeholder buy-ins as well, it becomes much more easier. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay, I have a quick survey for everyone. So who here logged into the free Wi-Fi on your phone today? Do you have a VPN software on your phone? One guy. You got 2 guys. 3 guys. Okay. And who, no one's going to raise his hand. Who logged into the VPN without a Wi-Fi without a VPN? No one. Oh, 1 guy. 2. The vendors. The vendors. Oh, he has VPN. So, come on. That's like, we're talking about products, right? We're talking about products to make it even more secure. As an individual, you have to take responsibility for your security. So, beware of the free Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we only have time for some closing comments. If you'd like to do any closing comments. And thank you, everyone, for the questions. Great questions. Really made it easy, interactive, rather than just going through a bunch of questions on our own. And also thank you to the sponsors.
We have one more question from an online viewer.
Oh, yes.
So Charles asks, AI is making an impact in generating content, art, video, offering a level of knowledge to individuals who would otherwise not be able to make use of that knowledge. I'd mention AI exploits social engineering to a larger extent than we would see otherwise.
So,
more of a statement. Would you guys like to follow up on the statement?
We agree. I agree.
we agree. Yeah. No. Okay.
And we realize it's warm in here.
I'll be super quick. Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Kabiri. I work in GRC for a legal tech consulting firm, and I'm really interested in this panel, particularly because we have private organizations and we have public organizations, and I think how you handle cybersecurity differently is so interesting. Particularly Annie's point to developing a model in-house so you can have control over it. I work in a small business. We don't have the resources to do that. I also work for a tech company. So we have a lot of developers that use it. I also work with legal departments and major corporations in fintech and healthcare, so they have a lot of requirements, right? There's a lot to juggle. How can businesses that are kind of in the in-between, they're small, medium enough that they need to use AI, they need to use these emerging tools, they're not big enough that they have the resources to have the full control over them, other than just getting certified with ISO SOC right? What would you recommend across public and private, right? We have so many different resources. How do you handle this?
I can take the public side. So sometimes you think about, just like how you use that use case of crowdsourcing, there's also the resource of local government collaboration to accelerate learning. And it's something that we encourage. There is no formalized program for it, but it's encouraged. And we have contracts, or what they call MOUs, with different entities to do so for different reasons, not necessarily cyber related, but the premise is still there. So I would take that model and apply it to your situation as well, to crowdsource. Crowdsource internally or crowdsource externally with other partners and try to accelerate mostly learning. But again, at the end of the day, to even play, I truly believe you have to have some notional data governance model, some notional acceptable use policy on what you should or should not be doing, if you can't afford the tools that cost money to do so. So just a general comment.
Now, Gary, are you also collaborating with other municipalities, given that you're in the public sector?
In certain respects, yes. Not necessarily in cybersecurity, but with other things, other types of projects, given the scope of my particular area.
But not cybersecurity.
Not cybersecurity. Yeah. There is collaboration in terms of what other folks are doing, but what I've always learned is that, let's say, for example, you're in healthcare. Healthcare folks will say, oh, I'm HIMSS level 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or from infrastructure perspective, I'm Infram 7. So they tend to rate themselves inside their own vertical, and I would always try to rate myself outside the vertical. And I would look for verticals that truly are at the bleeding edge of innovation, process efficiency. Then I'd look at my controls and where I'm on the strategic roadmap of maturity and pattern after that, whether it's in terms of investment or just the practice of how you approach addressing problems. So,
thank you.
So I would identify as my company would be an SMB as well, tech company. It was a novel challenge a year back, right? I really look up to the AI governance coming out of EU. My goal is to create transparency, right? When you use AI, it's not a bad thing to use AI, but create transparency. Don't stand behind the doors and say it's our product. It's something we do. You use something else and then give a output, right, at this point. And I think that's the main part of it, like creating FAQs on your website, having an acceptable AI usage policy, having data flow diagrams on how you use your AI tools. You don't have to reveal IP-related information, but you can still be very open about this is what you use. I've had customers who were very concerned for using OpenAI, but they were very good, or they were very happy if you use Microsoft Copilot. Well, it's the same thing with the layer of Microsoft on it. It takes time to explain them, but as long as you are confident on your capabilities, on what exactly are you justifying, there's a higher chance of you getting a buy-in from your customer. And we want, as again I said, ISO, SOC, they're all assurances. But when you talk to somebody and give them transparency, that's a whole different level of assurance. And that's what one should thrive for. And again, I mean, US is not going to spit out any AI-related regulation in the next 5 years at least. Privacy is still a far-reach dream for us, right? So we have to look up to something which is already an exemplary stance in the world and say, how can I take the good points out of it? We don't want to choke innovation, but at least we want to create an environment where there is fairness in the conversation versus take our technology. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Just real quick, because they're going to do the raffle. I know you guys all want to know who's
Yeah,
going to
looks
win all
like
that
they're
stuff.
ready to take over.
But really quick is that you're talking about small, medium businesses who might not have a lot of resources. What's what you mean? And obviously, they also have to get into AI. If they don't, they're going to be dinosaurs. So I like what the 909 cyber presentation they did earlier. They said, you know, what they do is they get some really smart interns. And so the interns could be 3rd, 4th year in cybersecurity, software engineering, computer engineering, all that stuff. And, you know, partner with your internal stakeholders to build something and they can do the research. Now, there are vendors out there, I won't say who because I'm vendor agnostic. And so I have much more visibility to their privacy laws. Unlike OpenAI, we don't know what their terms of service is. So there are some other vendors out there. Specifically, if you're really worried about data security, you should think about what are healthcare, small, medium, hospital, urgent care. What are they using for their AI vendors? Why did they choose them? Is it because they're secure, they're cheap, they're fast turnaround, things like that. A lot of people are doing research out there. You don't have to, you know, reinvent the wheel. But, you know, I'm just telling you, my kids are all in college now. They're like, getting internship is very hard. They'd be happy to work on things like this, like cutting edge stuff. So many kids out there are ready to jump in it.
Thank you, Annie. And thank you to everyone for the questions. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. And I'm sure you guys realize that these guys could be literally anywhere other than here, and they chose to be here with us today. So please give them another round of applause because we really appreciate them and their time. And the bar is still open, so you guys go get a cocktail. And we've got some prizes to give away. And we want to go ahead and also thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be possible, and this would not be possible. So give them another round of applause.